Hello, this is Frank Falvey with Frank Presents, and today it's my honor and privilege to have two state representatives. The representative from Franklin Medway, Representative Jeff Roy. Welcome.
Great to see you. Thank you.
And Representative Mike Soter.
Yep.
From Bellingham,
Bellingham.
Medway. Oxford, did you say?
Blackstone, Millville, and Uxbridge.
Millville and Uxbridge.
Right.
You know, in Uxbridge they have on Sunday sometimes great country and western bands and dancing. Country and western dancing.
He frequents them.
I'm an honorary member.
There you go. There you go.
Let's begin, Mike. Tell us about yourself and your district.
Sure. I was elected. I live in the town of Bellingham. I've lived there since 2005. I started getting involved in politics in 2011. I ran for the Board of Selectmen in Bellingham. Was elected in 2011. Stayed in that position until I got elected to state representative, where I resigned in December of 2018. Right on our 300th anniversary kickoff of the town, I was heading out, and the town was getting ready to kick off their 300th anniversary, so it was actually kind of fun. We got to celebrate that. It was kind of like a going-away party for me. And I got sworn in 2019, and I've been there. I'm going now into my fourth term.
And look, the nation is coming into its 250th birthday to celebrate you being in the state legislature.
There we go.
How's that?
Perfect. It's all one big party.
It's all timing.
So you're in your fourth term now.
I'll be going. Yeah, I just started my fourth term. Yep. So,
Jeff, what about yourself?
So I'm honored to be entering into my seventh term in the state legislature, and as you know, I had 10 years of service on the school committee here in Franklin, 2 years on the town council, and since 2013 I've been in the state legislature, and it's been a wonderful ride. I still have gas in the tank and looking forward to another session starting up.
How do you get appointed to the committees that you're on, and what committees are you on?
well, I think we'll be taking that up under the rules. I think we have to get through the rules for portion first, and we'll be taking that up, I think, after this week or next week. So I would think after this week, if we're in rules, we're in session on Thursday. So next week.
What to the rules?
It's the rules between that we follow between the joint rules between the House and the Senate.
Yeah,
And
they
it's
actually
basically
establish the committees.
They establish all the committees.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so the nature of some committees could get eliminated, and some.
Some could change, some could be added. I haven't heard anything about any major shifts taking place, but you know, that's the first step, is you vote on the rules, which establish the committees, and then the respective, so in my case, it'll be the Speaker of the House who will appoint all the members of the committees, the chairs, the vice chairs, and the members, and for Rep. Soter, it's the minority leader, Bradley Jones, and he does it.
Yep.
Now, all of that rests with each of those two individuals. The whole committee is appointed,
Yes.
and the chair is appointed also by the ranking member. In your case, would be appointed by the minority leader.
That's how it works. Yeah.
Right.
That's how it works. What committee are you presently on, though?
I'm on
Or
quite
last year, were you on?
Last year I was a ranking minority on financial services, which is a pretty big committee. It handles all the insurance and investments and banking and things like that. So it was it was actually very interesting. All those bills that we heard, and a lot of back and forth with things I didn't even know about the banking industry or the insurance industry and things like that. It was a really interesting 2 years, and I really enjoyed being on that committee. I was also on Labor and Workforce. I was also on the Cannabis Policy Committee. So I had a different variety of things. I've been on the cannabis policy for now. I was 2 terms. So it was good in revenue. I was ranking minority in revenue, which I enjoyed. I've been on that for 2 terms, and I enjoy that committee, and taxes and things are some of the things I feel passionate about. So
He loves to raise the taxes.
no, that's not true. That's not true. I like to be an opposite voice of reason to raising taxes. It's been an interesting 2 years. We'll see what happens. I did put some requests in. We'll see how that works and where I fall in the minority leader's ability to appoint, and what if the caucus supports it, and we'll see what happens. So.
And then yourself, Jeff?
So for the past 4 years, I've been chairing the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy. That's the committee that in that 4 years we did 3 major pieces of climate and energy legislation. Before that, I served as the chair of the Higher Education Committee. And before that, I was the acting chair of the Healthcare Finance. So I've gotten a broad spectrum of the various committees. I've talked to the Speaker about what to do for this particular session, and I anxiously await what he gives me for an assignment. It's entirely up to him. I serve at the pleasure of the Speaker, but wherever he puts me, I think I can be helpful.
Now, when you're chair of a committee, right, does that eliminate you from being a member of any other committee?
Typically, it especially if you're doing one of the more busy committees, that's it. You chair that committee and you don't serve anywhere else. So,
How about when you're the minority leader in a committee? Obviously, that doesn't apply to you, that you can still be on other committees.
Right, I could still be on other committees. There's only 24 of us, so we have to kind of split all of our time accordingly, and we have to, cover our share of the committee. So, I'll have one major committee that I'll be a part of, and then I'll be serving on other committees, I'm sure, that will put me in, I might be ranking on revenue again, or I might be ranking on cannabis or something like that.
Right.
That the minority leader looks for his best comfort zone on those committees because they're involved.
Right. I'd like to explore now the upcoming legislative year, or actually 2 years. Mike, I'd like to begin with you. What do you see as the major pieces of legislation that are going to be considered over the next 2 years?
Well, I think the first thing we're going to have to probably look at, and I think everybody in both House and Senate realize that we're going to have an emergency supplemental. We're going to have a supplemental budget coming up, which is going to involve some asks of the governor, and I think we're all asking a lot of questions, especially on the migrant issue. What's going to be spent and how she's going to spend it. We're all looking for answers. I know leadership on Jeff's side and our side have asked for a lot of questions and answers because our constituents are asking. Because it involves housing and shelter, and some of the things that have happened and transpired over the last month are not acceptable on any degree of what we've seen. I think some of those things are going to be topics of interest. I mean, we've filed all of our bills. Some of us have some bills that we filed, some things that we think we should tweak and look at. I think the budget is always going to be, this year and next year, always going to be some of those things that we're going to have some real good debate on, and what the governor's proposing, what the House decides to do. But, one thing I will say, being there and seeing two different House, two different speakers in House Ways and Means. The House Ways and Means chair and his staff is exceptional. They're really good, hardworking individuals, and led by the chair, Aaron Michowitz, who is, I think, probably one of the brightest stars that we have in the whole entire House. He's a smart, intuitive person that I think just kind of takes all of the feedback, and whether you're Republican or Democrat, he listens. Things aren't always favorable on our side, but I walk away with a lot of respect on the questions he asks and stuff. So I see that as always a lively debate in the things that we're going to ask. I think we definitely always going to be looking at the economic development piece, housing piece. I think those are all going to be things that are going to be big topics, and obviously climate always, and energy always seems to be a huge topic of conversation. So it's something that I think that those are some of really the key points.
Jeff, what do you think is going to be some of the newspaper headlines?
Well, I think definitely dealing with the migrant crisis, which is ongoing, will be right at the top. The governor has already filed a request for some additional funding, and as Mike had said, we have asked a lot of pointed questions on that. So I expect that to be one of the first orders of business. We'll move into the budget in the House side in April, but we have some lingering issues out there on the education front. For example, the voters decided to do away with the MCAS as a requirement, and so we're going to have to grapple with that as a potential issue, whether there should be something put in the place of MCAS. So I expect to see a lot of action on the education front. On the climate and energy front, in one of my conversations with the speaker, I said I do believe that we should be focused on the costs of this energy transition, and a campaign to educate people just what's involved in this transition. And I think a key component is how much all of this is going to cost and who's going to pay for it. It's a conversation we have unfortunately been putting off too long, and I can see people opening their electric bills and their gas bills today and wondering what's going on. So that'll certainly be an issue that will be there. And then finally, I would say reaction to things that are happening on the federal level. How are we going to address them at the state level? And the ones that immediately come to mind is, what is the impact of the tariffs on a place like Canada and Mexico? How is that going to affect our costs, and what responses can we do? And the offshore wind industry, which we had invested a lot of time and effort into, seems to be coming to a halt with the new president. What can we do to continue down that road? Unfortunately, one of the things that happened as a result of the president's action in the election was that Prysmian, which was an Italian manufacturer that was going to set up a shop in Brayton Point that was going to manufacture all of the cables for the entire east coast of the United States of America. They have taken the signals as what's happening in that industry negatively, and have decided to pull out from that project. Now that's 300 jobs that we're going to lose, plus an industry that we expected would be something remarkable for the Commonwealth. I still think there's good promise in that because we do need to gain our energy independence here in Massachusetts, and offshore wind provides us the greatest opportunity to do that. So I see us still going down that road, but there will be resistance at the federal level that we need to address.
In Franklin, we're going to apparently vote again on a school override, although we defeated it less than a year ago. Mm-hmm. In your communities, is any of them pushing for a school override?
Well, last year we did a small one to hire paramedics that we desperately needed. A lot of people aren't really going into the full firefighter paramedic field. They're just kind of stopping at the paramedic field. So that was one area where we needed a lot of attention, and the fire chief put a good plan together on how that will increase calls and increase the Medicare receipts for the town. So the first initial investment that was done. The town Bellingham, for example, did an override a few years, right in the middle of COVID in 2020 to kind of catch things up. It was about, I think it was right around $2 million.
Do you see, I have a sense that maybe the state isn't funding, or more communities are pushing for overrides, and so how do you look at funding for schools, and is that going to be an issue of where the money is coming from, and communities wanting to say that they don't have enough money for their local budget.
Well, I certainly see that. That's been an issue since I got in the door. It was an issue when I was on the school committee in town trying to figure out education funding. We did a major reform of education funding when we did the Student Opportunity Act. And that revisited the formula for state aid. Now, Franklin...
And that really helped Franklin at that time.
Well, Franklin has benefited tremendously from state aid.
Yeah.
We were getting pockets of increases in the millions of dollars for several years. We were the fastest growing community in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in the 90s. But things have begun to slow down. We haven't had the level of growth that we have had. We've got declining school enrollments, but costs are still going up in the schools. And as a result of the Student Opportunity Act, the formula was revised so that what you could see was that a community like Franklin was getting in excess of what they would qualify for under the formula. So those of us who were in communities that were at risk of losing state funding fought hard to get a hold harmless clause in the legislation. So that would mean that Franklin would not lose its state aid. It would have an opportunity to continue getting it. We're close to $30 million annually in state aid. We'd continue to get that plus the minimum amount of increase, which would be anywhere from $30 a student to last year we did $110 per student. So Franklin will get minimum aid increases until it catches up with the formula in terms of what it's supposed to get. I don't anticipate that Franklin will catch up in my lifetime because it's about a $12 million delta. So, you know, you have...
But do you see this as a major issue that the legislature is going to be dealing with, or is this just a minor issue that is going to not get much press?
It's a major issue in that we understand it's out there. And Franklin's not the only community in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that's having this struggle. But the question is, you know, what can we afford at the state level to send down? You know, Proposition 2.5, you know, had its good things about it at the beginning, but now when you're seeing health insurance increase and raises for teachers, trying to get a reasonable wage for teachers, you struggle to keep that under a 2.5% increase on an annual basis. Health insurance goes up some years 10, 20%. So you have that constant battle, and yeah, we hear the hue and cry from our communities every year, and we struggle with that issue.
It is a big struggle. I mean, I think one thing I will say, and you know, Jeff and I have talked about this a little bit in the past, is, you know, we had this time of period too where we were getting a lot of federal money from the fact that we had COVID, and a lot of money was invested in the schools, and a lot of money was given to the amounts of schools. So,
but also, everyone knew it was a one-time.
Well, and that's sometimes some of the problem. There was a lot of great programs that were probably created or spearheaded out of some of that money. But the problem is it was a one-time investment. So sometimes what happens is the tough decision, and I sympathize with a lot of the school board members and superintendents, because they really intended to do good things, but it was a one-time investment. I think there might have been some hope that those things would keep continuing to be funded long-term. And a lot of that can't be funded long-term unless the federal government is going to keep giving us that kind of money to do so. So you know, that's...
I don't see that happening in the next 4 years.
I don't see that happening. We'll see what happens, over the next 4 years, or we'll see what happens here. I mean, but that's some of it. I think some of the things that we see is, like my communities haven't really seen the kind of growth that when Jeff talks about Franklin, a lot of our communities have been very kind of a steady increase, but nothing of huge. I mean, they're looking at about a 2% increase, most of my communities, just this time around in the governor's budget. I do have a little bit of concern about the millionaire's tax and how it's being added in, and I think there is some I think there's some things that voters didn't realize when they voted that in, that, the actual line item of the budget doesn't constitutionally, or that can be adjusted, where the millionaire's tax money has to be dedicated to transportation and education. So what I think what we do, like we did last year, we went to $110. I think the legislature knows that is out there and that ability is out there. And I don't think what we want to do is we want to use that millionaire's tax to do what it was intended to do, what the voters said, is add on to the education investment, not try to balance out the line item because we're having a bad budget year or not well. So those are the things that we have to wrestle with. And we have great debate over it, but I think we're all in sync when it comes to education. I think we're all going to do our best to get to where we need to do it, so that we don't see, all of my school committees have said to me that $75, the governor's proposing, is kind of a break-even point for us. So those are things that we're going to have to take back to this budget time, and as we have our meetings with the House Ways and Means and our individual discussions, we're all, I'm sure, going to work together on some sort of legislation. Jeff always comes up with great legislation for me to co-sponsor, so it's always good to work together with my good friend, and I truly say that, good friend on this stuff, because we actually talk about it back and forth to figure out what we can do for the best for our districts, because we're all intertwined in this area.
The auditor had a ballot question on the ballot about disclosure in the legislature. And Jeff, you enlightened me that she was complaining that in the committees the vote was never put out. But you said that every committee, what is it, the yes vote? That
They will report who votes no.
No.
Right.
So it's very easy.
Very easy to figure out.
To figure out
Yeah.
who votes yes.
Yeah.
What are you both looking for the same thing in the rules as it regards to how much is disclosed that goes on within your House of Representatives? Are you in agreement on what the rules should be, or do you have disagreement?
I would say probably the central disagreement. I mean, there's a lot of agreement, and I will say, let me begin by saying that when I led the 2022 legislation, the climate and energy legislation, I consciously did an experiment in transparency. I wanted it to be the most transparent process that people have seen. One of the outbreaks of COVID is all of the committee hearings are online, and they're all recorded so that people can see the testimony and see how people stood on particular issues, and that's a resource that's available all the time. You can pick up, if you want to see a hearing from 2 years ago, it's out there, it's available to you. So we took that, plus before we went into the conference committee to reconcile both the House and the Senate versions of the bill, myself and the Senate chair of the committee sat with a reporter in an audience in front of 200 to 300 people to outline what the process would be, what the differences were between the House and the Senate bill, and where we thought we were going to be. And people walked out of that meeting saying, oh my God, those guys are on different planets. There's no way they're going to come to an agreement. And we did come to an agreement. And then in the middle of all of this, I was speaking freely with members of the press to let them know where we were, how we stood. And a law school professor from Boston University came to me and said, look, I'd like to create a legislative record of this bill. Would you share all of the notes and reports and things that you referred to and relied upon in putting this bill together? I said, I'll do it on one condition, that you make that available to members of the general public so they can get a glimpse into how this process works. And they agreed. And they created this wonderful library of information about this bill. The bad thing about it? Nobody looked at it. And, so I have myself asking, what do you mean by transparency? You had a glimpse into a major piece of legislation and nobody really cared, nobody paid attention. So that's one issue I deal with. The second issue, and I had said this before the election, that there's a constitutional issue involved in this auditor's question. And that will be litigated in the courts. The lawsuits have already begun. And the Attorney General has said, I don't think that this is constitutional. The former auditor, Suzanne Bumps, said, this is not constitutional. I never took that step because I did not believe I had that authority. However the courts decide, we are going to have to live with that result. And I think that's what's going on right now. But I think you'd be amazed at how much transparency already exists out there if people would just take advantage of it. The website we have is amazing. You can follow bills and track bills and get that information. And my friends on the other side of the aisle, we constantly have conversations and dialogue. Do we agree on everything? Absolutely not. But we do agree that whatever we do has to be in the best interest of the public.
One of the things I've learned when I came in here in 2018, because I really thought, information and data was everything that we were getting, and how I thought things were going to turn out in the election and where I was, and I was completely wrong. So one of the things I did was starting to read the tea leaves into elections and what people think, and whether you like him or don't like him, Donald Trump, one of the things he was amazing at, and his team were amazing at the first time around, was really understanding the social media sphere and understanding where people were capturing buzzwords. And one of the things I did with this whole issue of what the auditor's trying to do, and one of the key words is transparency. The other thing is easy access. I think one of the things that we have to do in the House, I think in the Senate and just in the House of Representatives alone, we have social media, which is a huge, and you can see it from this election. Younger people got engaged through certain different media channels, whether it was podcasts or whether it was people doing certain things with TikTok or certain things with Instagram and doing Reels. I think if we do more of that, and people kind of see the inside of the workings, and we all kind of do that through our own campaigns and our own way of doing it. But I think that's some of what people really want. People don't understand the whole audit process. When you get down in the weeds of it, people don't understand it. But what they're looking for, and some of those things, like Jeff's right, you question those things. We do a lot of things on our own, and we say, how do you not think we're transparent? But it's more than, I think, just that. I think people want access, they want availability, they want an easier way. Everybody's on their phones, everybody's on their computers, everybody's on their tablets doing what they're doing. And access to them is be able to go in, follow it, see it, be there, and be engaged in it. And I think if we take some of those steps, honestly, I think a lot of people will see a side of things. But I have faith in the Speaker and his legal team and everybody on that issue. So
let me ask this. The two of you work together for the walking trail that connects Bellingham and Franklin, in particularly putting a tunnel there. What currently are you two working on together for the communities that border one another, Bellingham and Franklin? Is there something in the works that that crosses over between Bellingham and Franklin, or other towns that you're trying to bring to fruition that both of you?
Let me just touch base on Uxbridge, because Uxbridge is in my district, and it's an interesting part in Uxbridge because there's actually a crossing point between this rail trail that connects Franklin and then the Worcester-Providence piece that there's a big push in funding to get through former Senator Dick Moore, who's part of his group in the Blackstone Valley area, to try to get. That would be something that we would love to extend and expand, because that would take it all the way down and make it a really interesting outdoor activity, but it would take it to a whole new level when you have, especially because the crossroads would be a very interesting recreational stop area. There's a lot of plans. If we could get this thing done, it would actually be one of the most impressive rail trails in the country, from what they're telling me. So it's something that from on our end, but I think we all have a vested part in finishing that piece, because that is what people want. They keep going, okay, and then they stop because the trail just stops, and then and then they think about what's behind that next wall. And I remember Jeff telling me the story when he was taking a bike ride with the secretary, and how this whole thing came to fruition and discussion. And it was great timing wise, because I just came in, and the first thing he pulled me in on was this funding and this project. So and it's the same thing.
It was a Republican governor,
Right.
with a Republican secretary. And I said, hey, let's work on this together. It's going to bring our communities together. And we do the same thing with road projects. Route 140 goes through both of our communities. We deal with projects together there. Route 109 in Medway, and we both represent Medway, work together on that. I chair the manufacturing caucus. Mike is a member of that. He's taken me to several of his companies out there in his district to look at what ways we can improve the environment and the ecosystem for manufacturers to thrive here in Massachusetts. You hear the bad things about Republicans and Democrats, but I can tell you, I don't believe we use those terms in any of our engagements. We are both committed to doing what's best for our districts and for the people of the Commonwealth, and I'm proud to go shoulder to shoulder with Rep. Soter on a lot of these issues.
Mm-hmm. So you do coordinate together to put forth the community development that affects both communities.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, are you both on the same page about the need for restrooms on 495, 290, 190?
Mm-hmm.
Old men like me, right? Young people with children. There's no place to go. It's a bathroom.
I would love to see, and we pushed it in the economic development bill the last time around, but I'm doing a lot of work with our transportation secretary, trying to coordinate better services along the highways. And when I talk services, I'm talking electric vehicle charging infrastructure along these places, and those would be ideal places to put in restrooms and other facilities that people can tend to while they're charging their vehicles. And we've called for...
maybe as you have a chance, because you haven't decided on the rules.
A restaurant committee? You want a restaurant committee?
Yeah, those are the restrooms.
Right. Well, we have a tourism committee.
Let's move it to the transportation, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that what we have done, we have asked the utilities and the Commonwealth to do a study of what is needed for infrastructure along the major highways in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And to the extent that it's going to deal with charging infrastructure and substations, restrooms is certainly a part of it, because you're going to have facilities there doing other things. You're going to have stores, you may have restaurants, you may have gas stations, you may have
now it's not going to happen before 2026, when we want a lot of tourism to come to Massachusetts.
You'd be surprised how quickly they can get the stuff up,
Yeah,
and you're very right. 2026 is going to be a huge year for tourism, and we've got to make it pleasant for people.
And I will say, if we actually go and look at some of our partners, like Japan, for example, one of the things you talk about the restrooms, and I always thought these were interesting, but after COVID, a lot of different things came out, and they have these cubes inside the city limits inside the city.
You saw the movie?
What's that?
You saw the movie?
No, I didn't see the movie. I was just watching all of what the government invested some of their money in to kind of make things work and happen easily, because the biggest complaint was public access to restrooms and things like that. And they're self-contained. They clean themselves. They sanitize themselves. It actually can be done very cost effectively. We don't have to. They can be automatically maintained 24 hours in a way that we could add charging stations, in which we desperately need. I mean, I'll tell you, one of the biggest hesitations I have on that is because we don't have enough of that access in the highway to charge our cars faster or keep maintaining that, plus internet service, things like that that we could have. So I think there's a lot of things that we could do to actually look at that from an economic boom. And you're right, 2026, we're going to have to prepare ourselves because there are going to be a lot of people that are going to come here from all over the world to be part of what's going to happen here.
All right, mentioning 2026, what are we going to do about our state flag? I love our state flag. I think it's perfect.
I asked him this question just the other day, didn't I?
I am about history is there for a reason. I think it's something that we shouldn't change. I hear both arguments of it, but I haven't heard enough on the negative to really change things dramatically. I think there's a lot of meaning in our town, our state seal and our state flag. And I don't think we should run away from that. I think we should embrace everything about it as far as what it helped us correct and what we needed to do and how we change. And that's what history of certain things does. I'm one of these people that, I look at what Secretary Condoleezza Rice said at one point. She said, tearing down statues it's a great moment, but you should understand what those statues meant in history and how we corrected those things to always make us a better country and better for who we are. And sometimes we have to be reminded of how things were and how bad things were to be better at it and to correct it better. And I think it's a reminder of who we are as a state, and I'm not for changing it.
I would also hope that as a Republican, you would realize that the cost of changing the flag, not only for the state, but for private people, is going to be enormous, and we probably have already spent $500,000 in just looking at the issue. I mean,
there's a commission
do away
on.
with the committee.
Well, the commission is looking at it.
Yeah,
they
but
haven't
let's end
issued
the commission.
They haven't issued a final report. Let's hear what they have to say and what recommendations they're going to make.
When do they have to give us a final report without getting refunded?
That's a great question. It's probably sometime in 2025. Because if they want to do anything about it, they've got to have a report and recommendations.
Before 2026?
Yeah.
We don't want a new flag before 2026.
Yeah, I don't see that. I don't see that happening in that time frame. Because look at
we end our legislative session.
He's wearing a pin
I'm not
here.
changing my pin. I'm always going to wear that.
The amount of items that will need to be changed as a result of this is extraordinary. Every piece of stationery, every business card, every tchotchke, every pin, every sign as you go into a state building. It's an enormous task. So I want to see what a committee comes up with for a report and recommendations. And I do hope that they include within the body of their report an examination of the costs that would be associated with such a move. Because I don't think we should do anything without examining all aspects of the question.
On some minor things, one that affected me, I had no idea that in auto insurance, I had always paid the $10 that if I have an accident, the first accident isn't you're not penalized by the insurance company. I never realized I had an accident, which was that on 495 I went over a piece of something. I don't know what it was. It broke my rear bumper and did some damage. The damage totaled about $2,000. I mean, to me that was not an accident. But it's now costing me, I gather, 5 years I'm going to be paying, I don't know, $900 extra a year. I'm going to be paying a tremendous amount of money for the next 5 years because they classified it as an accident.
See, it sounds like you were surcharged. And did you take advantage of the opportunity to appeal that surcharge?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
I wasn't even aware I had an opportunity to
Yes.
appeal it.
Yes, it's
if
right on there.
so there are standards at fault that the insurance companies use to determine whether somebody should be surcharged. And there's a presumption that you're at fault in certain circumstances. But you can appeal that. I think you have to pay a $25 or $35 charge, and then you go and you appear before, I believe it's a clerk magistrate who hears your version of the incident, and then makes a determination as to whether you should be surcharged. From the way you're describing it, you should not be surcharged. And it reminded me of a situation. I was coming down 495 when a vehicle in front of me dropped a piece of lumber. It was a 4x8, huge piece of wood. The thing bounced and went right through my the front part of my vehicle. A few feet higher, it would have gone through my windshield. And I did not get surcharged for that. So I don't see why a piece of debris in the highway should be your fault. You should look into that appeal.
Yeah, well, I also think that there's got to be more publicity in certain areas about things. And I don't know how to handle it, but
Well, he's on financial services,
Right
which
now.
handles all of those issues. So you just gave him an idea.
No, I think some of the things that I think are probably good as far as clear disclosures on if your insurance goes up because of a surcharge, it should say that your new yearly premium has a surcharge. You have the right in a certain amount of time to appeal this and do that. I was the same way. I had something happen very freaky. My driveway had ice. My wife hit the mailbox and it damaged a car, and unfortunately it was so icy then the car slid into the telephone pole. Didn't knock the telephone, but it did enough damage to the back and the front of the car where it was $9,000 worth of damage. So it's unfortunately our cars have all kinds of gadgets and everything that make everything expensive. That's in that front bumper and whatnot. But we missed the opportunity to file, and it's costing us about $900 a year surcharge, and I think it's like 6 years, and we're in the second year of our 6 years. So
I mean, for me, the surcharge is more than the damage.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I mean, if I ever knew what the surcharge was, right, I would have paid the damage myself and saved $4,000 or $5,000.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
What is a piece of legislation? You said you filed some legislation. What is an example of a piece that maybe is not earth-shaking if it gets passed or not, but it's important to you that it gets passed?
There's actually three that I filed that are very important to me this year and in this session. I mean, they're all important to me. Some are refiles from the previous session, but one of them, one from last session, is we have to be able to give our veterans with that are 100% disabled the ability to get a full property tax credit if the town adopts it. We really got to get down that road. I think it's something that we definitely desperately need to do. I have a lot of constituents, especially in my district, where they reach out all the time about this, and I have quite a few 100% disabled veterans. So that's something that really is something I'm going to try to push again this year. I know we had some variations of that in the HEROES Act, but it just didn't go quite to that extent point. The other thing that I did was some of the things that both presidential campaigns adopted was the no income tax on people who make tips. I think that would, again, reading the tea leaves of some of the ballot questions of the FAIR Act of minimum wage, paying them a certain set dollar amount. I'm glad that didn't pass because that would have affected so many people in the service industry. I think they would have found themselves not making as much money as they make currently. But what it would do is there would be no state income tax on tips, and I think that's something that is not a millionaire's tax. It's not affecting the millionaires, the billionaires. It's actually affecting a lot of hardworking people, and a lot of hardworking people who are working 2 jobs right now to make ends meet. So I think that would be something that I'm open to anyways discussion to make that happen. And I also did one where I also kind of taken a little bit off of both presidential campaigns, but not taxing the first $50,000 of state income tax, which would go towards veterans, which would go towards seniors. Only seniors and veterans would be the not taxing the first $50,000. One, because their cost of living has gone up dramatically. Sometimes they can't work multiple jobs. So I have those three things.
When was the last time you raised the deduction for individuals on the state income tax? When was the last time you raised, okay, the state banking? You can deduct $200. Why don't you go after the easy stuff? Raise from state if you have more than say $500 in interest from state banks. Raise that deduction up to $500. Raise the individual, double it. I mean, if you wanted the economic effect when those deductions were put in are nowhere near the economic consequences that they were when they were put in. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, my counter argument to that, though, would be that that doesn't go directly to some of the true areas where we're trying to help some of these areas that have been kind of hemorrhaging. And the service industry has been hemorrhaging for a very long time over the since 2020, since COVID. And I think what you're saying is these would be direct impact. I hear what you're saying, go for the easy things. I didn't get in this job to go into the easy things. I really didn't.
But the fair things, at least.
To some they are, some they aren't. Some they are, some they aren't. Average person doesn't understand deductions. They really don't. They don't know how deductions can help them, and the average person doesn't even qualify for some of those deductions. So I understand what you're saying. I think last year in our economic development bill, we increased the tax credit for a child tax credit, right? That was something that goes directly impact, and that was one of the first bills that the governor came in front of the Revenue Committee, and actually she was even attacked by folks on her side of the aisle, and I stuck up for her and defended her on that because that was something that was going to help the average family with children tremendously, especially moms that don't have double incomes and are raising families.
All right, let me turn it over to Jeff. Jeff, what is some legislation that you would like to see, that you filed, that you would like to see passed?
Well, I filed 41 measures, so I'm not going to go through them all. I'll pick one.
Right.
I'll pick one. And it's student loan reimbursement for human service workers. We need people to take care of our elderly at home. We need people to take care of our disabled, intellectually or physical. And these are not the most high-paying jobs in the world. And we also require them to have an advanced degree in order to do this work and to be skilled in it. So attracting and retaining employees in this field is very difficult. And so one measure that I have put forward would be to give some assistance to these folks paying off their student loans, something to the tune of $150 a month. So long as they work full-time in that job, that they dedicate several years to that job, and they stick with it and have the degrees, we should give them some relief. We tried this during COVID. We dedicated about $16.5 million to this program. It was so popular that the money ran out in like 3 months. So I think it's a way for us to help these people in this particular situation. That's one of 41.
Unemployment insurance in Massachusetts, apparently we inappropriately used, what was it, 30 million?
2.5.
2.5?
2.5 billion.
Billion.
Yes.
2.5 billion.
Yes.
How in the world are you thinking to pay that off? Are you transferring money out of savings somewhere? Or what is the legislative mechanism that you're going to approve to pay that back to the federal government?
Well, it was settled for $2.1 billion, and it's a 10-year payment plan to pay back the federal government. So
interest-free?
Look, I don't know the particulars of the deal, but I would assume they're not going to have to pay interest on that money. But it's, it was.
So you're going to have to put that in the budget.
they're going to have to put that in the budget.
So on a yearly basis, how many years? 10?
10 years,
So it's, I don't know, what, 200?
200 million a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that's how I have to deal with it. It was something that came up during COVID, and you know, I don't really understand how it was missed, but it was. The nice thing about it is that some people who were suffering did benefit from this program, but it has to be repaid.
My comment, and I read all your stuff that you sent me about 495 Mass Pike interchange. To me, it's the greatest waste of money. Stop it now. Take the savings and build the bridges over the canal. Because
Well, we're gonna do them both.
well, where are
and
you going to get the what? 700 billion, is it? Or
Well,
I mean, it's a huge amount.
yeah,
that
it's going to
you still
require
want.
federal help to get that done.
But you got it back when Kennedy was senator.
Well, I think they announced that I think the federal government.
they're gonna help.
They're going to help.
You're still short.
Well,
As far as I know, you're still short an, I don't know, a crazy amount of money.
But that 495 interchange at the Pike had to be changed. It was
it had to be changed.
yeah.
Not only it's on time. It's ahead of schedule. It's staying within budget even during these tough times.
I don't know how it's ahead of schedule. I never see anyone working
Oh,
up there.
they're there. They got a lot done right away.
Yeah, if you
immediately.
come
The
off
first
of the Pike to get onto 495, it's much more glorious today than it was a year ago, because they finally opened that off-ramp from the Pike eastbound to get on 495. So they have a separate off-ramp, and the off-ramp from the westbound has it singularly, so you don't have that big X where people had to cross. I was amazed that
it worked, and
people-
you got to remember that exit had tolls, so everything had to stop. So when you did the crisscross, it wasn't as bad because everybody had to go through the tolls.
Those tolls
When the
haven't
mo-
been there for
They
years.
haven't been there for years, but it
For
was
years.
always designed. It never changed the design of
Yeah.
how that
Yeah,
interchange
it
was
just
designed.
didn't work.
It just didn't work.
Yeah.
They redid it when they took the tolls down in Framingham. They redesigned the Framingham exit, if you remember. They did some modifications. It was a little bit easier, but this one had to be done. And just take a look at how Franklin's exploded, and just take from Franklin just to that interchange, how the communities and the amount of people that live around that area and travel and work to Boston.
Mike, I know Jeff does tours of the State House.
He does them very well. He makes me
and
look bad.
We did one together the other day.
Yes,
Did you?
Yes, we did.
Yes.
Yeah.
With the
Tri-County football team champions, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. They won in a class called a vocational school football.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it was in a class.
Yep.
Mentioning Tri-County to both of you, one school needs a superintendent and a principal, and it never has to worry about funding because it's made up of one person from each community or something.
Yeah, there's 11 communities.
I mean, when you're looking at public schools, if they don't have enough funding, the charter schools and the Tri-County schools certainly have no problem getting the funding they seem to need and operate. I mean, they're getting a whole new school, not even 50 years, and we need vocational schools desperately, and we're going to tear this one down.
Going to tear this one down because they did a feasibility study to determine what it was going to take to fix the building, and it was alarming how much it was going to cost. And that's just an estimate of what you think. That's before you begin tearing the walls down and finding other problems within the walls. So it was determined to be more cost effective to build a new facility, and they're also going to get better MSBA funding. But they couldn't just do it on their own. They actually had to have a vote in all 11 communities. And
which was unfair in the sense that every community, even if it had one student, right,
right.
had their votes there, right, counted just as much as Franklin. And so they have no reason to even question the school.
But
because
the vote worked out. It worked out in favor of a new school. So they're going to get it. It's going to be a state-of-the-art facility at a time when we have a crushing need for skilled workers.
Let me ask this. Mm-hmm. Should we at least try to sell that school that we're no longer going to use to a union, to a trade center, to someone that maybe wants to make money in training adults or high school, make it a charter school? Is there a reason that we first, before we tear it down, want to look at if we can make some money by selling the property to someone that will use it for vocational purposes?
I guess I'll answer is I haven't looked at the total plan. I have one community, it's Medway, in the 11. I don't know if they necessarily can do that because I think the plan is they need that building, existing land for space for parking and where the building is going to be. It's part of the plan because they're taking the existing parking in areas now to build a new school. Once that's erected, the other, kind of like what they did in some of the other communities, like I noticed they did with Doherty High School. So I don't know what you could build there. Even if you did, what exactly you're going to put next to a school, and if the building can even be remodeled in a way, because they might have to tear it down also or bring it down to the ground. And
all I'm saying is it worth inquiring that it continue as a vocational school, even if someone in the private industry wants to buy it and continue it as a private school?
Yeah, the only problem with that is where are you going to put Tri-County?
Yeah.
They'd have to find a whole new plot of land to do it.
The parking situation can't be somehow figured out. A garage? I don't know.
I've been there.
It's
all right.
Garage parking is just as much as a building these days.
Look at the opportunities they will have to train workers in a state-of-the-art facility. That's the big thing. They'll be able to bring them in. You know, the technology has changed.
Frank, they do a lot of night programs there, if I'm not mistaken, for adults that need education, that want a further education in trade. So they have a lot of programs there at night, especially for license certifications. The amount that could increase just alone, because that's extra funding for them outside of what they get funded. So I hear you on vocational education. So,
Mike, is there a particular issue you would like to talk about, or?
I thank you for having me. I appreciate you having me here. I think we have a lot of challenges. I think there's some things that we are going to be faced with, and a lot of things that we're going to have to work together. And I think sometimes I think everybody needs to listen to everybody's ideas, especially when it comes to this issue with the migrant housing issue and housing in general. Mental health is very important to me. It continues to be a major problem where I also think we need to kind of face that we have to keep throwing money at something and expect it to work, and we have to do a little bit better on some of the tools and partner with some of our private sector individuals to bring back some resources and things that we've kind of walked away from over the years. It's something that's near and dear to my heart, and I've lost, again, 2 more friends that have committed suicide over this past year. So,
Mike, I'd like to ask you, if people want to reach you or contact your office, meet you in person, whatever, how can they do that?
Well, they can reach out to me anytime on social media. We monitor it through all channels as far as anytime they want to meet with me. We have made a commitment when we first ran that we will always be available to meet with any constituents. Office hours are great, but we noticed that a lot of people weren't showing up to office hours, so we've made ourselves readily available and have a schedule that we can kind of plug you in right away to talk about anything you need. But you can always reach out to me. The best way to reach out to me is always through email with detail of information that you want to talk about. It's Michael, Michael, Soter, Soter, @mahouse.gov. That's really the best way, and obviously social
Well,
media.
What do you mean by social media? I mean,
My Facebook, Instagram, they can get through. Message me there too, also, or they can call my office, which is I'm going to read you the number: 617-722-2305, 617-722-2305, and my assistant will call you back also and set something up.
Jeff, if people want to reach you, how do they do that?
Sure.
And is there something you'd like to say to the watching audience?
Sure. So first of all, you can get me by email, jeff.roy@mahouse.gov. I'm at the Senior Center every third Thursday of the month from 8:30 in the morning till about 10 o'clock. So happy to see you come there. Call me on the phone, 617-722-2030, 617-722-2030. Just shoot me a note, and if you can't make office hours, we can set up an individual time. I enjoy the opportunity to be the state rep. I enjoy the opportunity to work with great people like Rep Soter, and look forward to continuing our work together to make Massachusetts a great place to live, work, and raise a family. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Frank Presents and Representative Mike
Soter.
Soter and Representative Jeff Roy.
Great to see you.
Nice to
Thank
see
you.
This program was made possible by your Franklin friends and neighbors, good folks just like you. Thanks for supporting Franklin TV. And thanks for watching.